Welcome to the Center for U.S. War Veterans Oral Histories at the National Guard Militia Museum of New Jersey in Seagirt, a partner of the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. Today is June 3rd, 2015. I am Carol Fowler, Director of the Center. With me assisting is Rider University intern Jonathan Lewis. Our honored veteran is Joseph Dauber, who served in World War II with the United States Navy in the Asiatic Pacific. He served from 1942 until
August
1946?
Yeah. August 46.
Okay. And today is your 70th anniversary of your
Believe it or
enlistment.
not, yes.
Congratulations.
Thank
Making
you.
it this far. Thank you for wanting to be here today, Joe. Your eyewitness account is considered a primary historical source and a valuable contribution to our Veteran History Project here at the National Guard Militia Museum. And good morning, Joe, and welcome.
Thank you.
I guess you could tell us how you heard about this project.
I heard this through Bill Wishart. He lives in the same development I do. And in fact, I had been here on visiting the museum with him and a group of fellas, I think last year.
Right.
And then, of course, they talked about this program, and I've been invited, so here I am.
We're so happy you made it here, and Bill's happy too. He's one of our weekend volunteers.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's go back to life prior to service. Do you want to talk about, you lived in Pennsylvania?
I was born in Pennsylvania, Shamokin, Pennsylvania. The family came to Bayonne probably around the age of 4 or 5, maybe 6, I'm not sure. And then that's where I was raised and lived until I moved into Brick a few years back.
Oh, okay.
But Bayonne is where essentially I'm from, so to speak.
Nice. And you just celebrated your 90th birthday
Yes,
last week?
May 30th, Memorial Day. It was
Oh,
my 90th birthday.
congratulations.
Thank you, kindly.
I hope you had a nice big party.
We did have we had a beautiful party the other day, Saturday, in fact.
Oh, nice.
Yes. Yes.
So let's talk about what happened when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. You were in Bayonne.
Right.
Were you in school, in high school?
Well, actually, when Pearl Harbor occurred, I was in New York City. And I had gone to a movie and walked around. I like to spend time in New York City. It was a great place to be. And it just so happened on that Sunday, I was in New York City. And at the time when the movie was on, just by way of reality of what happened all over, I suspect, they put on the house lights, turned off the movie, and a shore patrolman came on the stage and told all the military people they had to go back to their home base immediately. And that was the introduction to World War II for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
of
at
course-
at age 17, you ended up in the Navy. How did that come about?
Well, right after that, being Joe Hero, so to speak, I went over to Newark about a month or two later to enlist. But being only 16, he wouldn't take me. But he did suggest that if I wanted to, I could take the physical, which I did. He says, everything was okay. He says, we'll be in touch with you. And sure enough, he was in touch with me because when I turned 17, a day or two, I got orders and I was in the Navy 4 days after I was 17.
Why the Navy? Why not the Marines or the Army or the Air Force?
I suppose, number one, for whatever reason, I just haven't a love of the Navy. Still today, I have very strong feelings for the Navy. I see a Navy ship or a group of sailors or officers, I get very excited. I just like the Navy.
Okay.
And Dad would talk to me once in a while as a kid, he says, just in case you're gonna go into the military, he said, think about the Navy.
Oh.
He says, you know, in the Navy, he says, you'll always be well-fed and you'll always have a bunk to sleep in. And so when it happened, that was what I did.
Did anybody in your family serve in the military other than you? Or before you?
No. No.
Okay. So where did the Navy first send you?
Well, I, of course, was sworn in at 90 Church Street, New York City. From 90 Church Street, New York City. Then from there, I was given a meal ticket and a train ticket, and I went to Newport, Rhode Island for boot camp.
What kind of adjustment was it for you to go from civilian life to military life?
Didn't bother me a bit. The only thing is, I had, things were tough at home. Just think you were just about coming out of the Depression. I had, in fact, quit school at 16 to go to work. And, but then this came along, and I decided I wanted to go in, and that's what I did.
Who was still home? Who did you still have at home?
I'm sorry. I had mother and father and a brother and 2 sisters.
Your brother was younger? Younger brother?
A little over a year younger, yes.
Okay.
And the 2 sisters were younger. I was the oldest, yes.
Right. Tell us about boot camp.
Boot camp, like my father says, you'll be well fed. I never saw so much food in all my life.
Oh, good.
When I get up in the morning for breakfast, right, I couldn't believe that there could be so much food. There was a long line, and of course, you help yourself to a plate and a cup and the utensils, and it was serve yourself, and they had fellas behind the counter who would dish it out, whatever you wanted or didn't want, as the case may be. And everything was there: bacon, eggs, ham, potatoes, cereal, fruit, anything you wanted was there. And it was just great, I had a good time.
That's good.
And it was a good routine, up at 5:30 and lights out at 9 o'clock at night. And you went through your drills, you had some class work, and you had a bed, clean mattress and sheets. And you, of course, had to take care of yourself. You had to do your own laundry. You had to shower and keep your body clean, because that was important to the Navy and to the guys too, because you're sleeping in a room with 20, 30 guys, that you have to maintain good sanitation. So the Navy had the right idea: keep yourself clean. Yeah.
So you did well there?
Yes, it was took about 7 weeks to go through boot camp. And then I got orders to go to radio school in Bedford Springs, Pennsylvania.
Oh. What was that like?
That was nice. It was a beautiful resort. And if you look at that one picture where the medals are, well, that was boot camp.
Okay, I'll look at boot camp.
Oh, this. By way of background.
Oh, that's Bedford Springs right there?
Bedford Springs, yes.
You look very proud there.
Oh, that was nice, yeah. Beautiful country. It's not too far from this area.
Compared to Bayonne, right? Beautiful country.
Yes.
Nice. Sorry. Okay. How did you do? How did you do in the job at radio school?
Well,
Were you good?
I wasn't the best student, but I was good, I passed the test. You were put through the paces. You were taught radio theory, You were taught how to type. You were taught the Morse code. And then, of course, you had to learn to send the Morse code, and you also had to learn to receive the Morse code. And you had to do a certain speed at both sending and receiving messages. And as long as you met that quota, you graduated.
Nice. So of course you met the quota.
Right. So then when that finished,
I wanted to ask you, do you still know Morse code?
oh, sure.
That's cool.
As a matter of fact, somewhere around here, there's a facility that has a setup, and they have the hookup for sending and receiving Morse code.
Oh, I think I know what you mean. InfoAge, where Bob works.
Yes.
Right here in Wall.
Yes. And we had a tour
Marconi.
there one day, and I got on and I started sending messages. Look, at all these years, I can still send a Morse code.
Oh, I would have loved to film that. That sounds
It was
exciting.
local, you know, it didn't go anywhere. But it stays with you a lifetime.
Yes.
You will never forget the Morse code.
Wow.
My feeling, anyhow. And other fellows that I've met that were radiomen, they had the same experience. They still know it. Yeah,
That's why I asked you. I've heard that
Yeah.
people still remember.
yeah.
How long were you in Pennsylvania doing that? A couple months?
That was August, September, 3 months.
Oh, 3 months. Okay.
Yes.
Did you get to go home?
I could go home, but I was going to have fun. So
You had freedom.
when I got weekends off, I went to Pittsburgh. I hitchhiked on the superhighway and went to Pittsburgh and spent my weekends in Pittsburgh. I had a great time.
That's good. You were a teenager and you had freedom.
Well, you know, a lot of people don't really understand. The guys like me, who had very little, you know, you didn't have much money, if at all, and you were restricted, and even fellas that, like, you know, were working, they were very limited. Now here, all of a sudden, you got a steady check coming in, and you've got money in your pocket. You have very little expense because the Navy's footing the bill, you know. And so you really can have yourself a nice time. And you got out of where you were born, and now you're traveling. You're seeing things, you're seeing
Exactly.
people, different events. This is a big change in your lifetime. People don't, I think, understand that even today, what a difference that made for a lot of people.
And plus you were learning new things and you had a purpose.
Of course.
For
You meet
the war.
different people. You meet just different people who do different things, have different occupations, different hobbies. And everybody had their door open. Everybody was very friendly. I mean, you had a good time.
That's good.
Nobody said no to the sailors.
And then you got orders again?
Then I got orders, and I was assigned to a ship in Key West, Florida.
Do you remember the ship?
Sure, it was the USS Eagle, E-A-G-L-E, and it was called a PE-55. And believe it or not, it was a World War I type ship.
Was it in good shape?
It was a steam-driven ship donated to the Navy by Henry Ford during World War I.
Wow.
Yeah. And the ship was a training ship, and they trained sonar crews, both enlisted and officer, for anti-submarine warfare.
And what was your mission there?
I was a radioman,
Oh, that's right.
and so when we went out, we had the ship, we had a submarine that was there, and we went out, and the submarine would submerge, and the crews, they would be taught how to detect and attack a submarine. And that was the job of the ship.
So you would pretend to torpedo it?
Did I?
You would pretend to torpedo it?
Well, yes, of course, yes. Well, we didn't have torpedoes,
Right.
but it was, setting depth charges, and you simulated what you would do to attack the submarine once you detected it. So that when these people went out to the fleet, they were trained, they knew how to operate the equipment, they knew how to make a run on a sub, and that was their job when the war came, when they got into combat zones.
How was the morale for you and your buddies?
For me personally, the duty was too tame, and I'll come to that.
Okay.
Okay, and but most everybody was happy. There was no real dissension, no griping, moaning, and groaning. I mean, here you are in Florida,
Key West,
sunshine,
wow.
good fishing,
Oh,
and but like I say, the duty was a little too tame for me. So one day, one of the fellas said to me that another ship was passing through, in fact, the same type ship, another ship. And he said the fella didn't want to go, and the ship was designated to go to the Pacific area. So I says, well, that sounds good to me. So I made arrangements, I met the fella, and he and I talked, and we agreed between us that if we could, we would swap. I would go on his ship, and he would take my place on my ship. So we went to each other's commanding officers, and we talked to them, and they agreed that if this is what you want, and you're happier doing that. So they were very nice, they accommodated us, and we swapped. I went to that ship, and he took my place on my ship.
and that was the USS.
That was the PC 464.
Did your job change?
No, I was still a radioman. Oh, sure.
Oh, he was also a radio man?
Yes.
I see.
Oh, yeah, we had to be like, yes,
Okay,
yes. You're not going to send a seaman to replace an experienced radioman,
Oh, okay.
So that's how it was done. Now, do you want to know what happened after that?
Please.
All right, so I got on the ship, had all my possessions, made myself comfortable, and the ship left, and we went to Colon, Panama.
Can you spell that?
Colon, Colon,
Oh, I see.
Panama. And the ship's duty at that time was to do convoy duty, escort duty for the commercial ships transporting cargo between Panama, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and South America. So we made tours of whatever schedule, whatever we had to go out and whatever we were called upon to do. So we did escort duty for those ships, and that was the first leg of being on the new ship.
So you were in the Caribbean?
In the Caribbean, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we made a couple trips. Like I said, we did go to Cuba regularly. We made a couple trips to South America, and we specifically wound up at Colombia. We made a couple trips to Colombia.
Did you stay aboard, or did you get to go off?
Well, in Cuba, you could go on a base at night if you didn't have duty, And in South America, we only had like a day hangover, so that you had maybe a 12-hour liberty, and then the other half of the crew would have a 12-hour liberty. And so it was very limited. You didn't stick around doing nothing. They kept you working. So that's how the routine worked.
Do you have any stories about Guantanamo Bay or Colombia?
Well, I'll tell you, the worst storm I experienced was in the Caribbean. We had a terrible, terrible storm one day, one night.
Hurricane?
It was awful. God, it was awful.
Wow.
The ship was just tossed and turned, and to a point that at points the ship's stern came out of the water. Now, when your ship's stern is out of the water and that propeller is turning, everything vibrates and shakes like you can't believe. Oh. It's incredible, the vibrations that propeller makes, propelling that ship. And in the water, you don't feel it. You hear it, you don't feel that much. But out of the water, it's actually fantastic. So that storm must have lasted 8-10 hours. But we got through it, and in the morning, when I got up, the whole deck was littered with fish. They washed up with the waves, and when everything settled down, those who were on or by the ship wound up laying on the ship's deck.
Did you get to have them for chow?
It's the funniest sensation.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what did you do with them? Did you eat them?
They washed them overboard. Just let them go.
Oh. You had enough food on your ship?
Yeah, we had enough to eat, yeah. But it was quite an experience, I must say. The ship would be up and then down and pound on the water. You can't believe. The water has such force. You know, people don't, you see floods and you see and hear about water. Unless you really experience, you have no idea really how powerful that water is. It's amazing.
Were you seasick?
I wasn't seasick on that thing, but every once in a while I would get nauseous. I never really got seasick, but I would get a little nauseous sometimes, yeah. Yeah. So you just go down and flop out and it passes, you know. Like everything else, you do what you have to do, you know.
What were your shifts of duty?
Well, you stood watches 4 on and 8 off. 4 hours on duty, 8 hours off, then back on watch again, and you just kept rotating. And then every once in a while, and I'm not sure the schedule, we had what they called you dog the watch. Instead of a 4-hour tour, you have a 2-hour tour. And that puts you now in another time frame, so that you're not standing the same for the 4-hour watch with the same hours, like say 4 to 12, or 12. Let's say midnight to 4 in the morning. You don't want to be doing that every day. So you would dog the watch, and so when you had a 12 to 4, the next watch could be 4 to 8. Or 4 to 6, and then you just kept rotating. So that 12 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 12, and you just kept going, you know. And that's how most ships run the same way.
Can you describe standing watch, what it entailed?
Well, standing watch for me as a radioman, you were tuned in to a certain frequency. Okay, and it was your job to stay by the radio. You could put it on a speaker, you could put on the earphones, and wait and listen for any message that would be sent to the ship specifically, or to all ships in general. Okay, and whatever message you got, you typed it out, put it on the form, and had it brought up to the bridge, where it was given to the officer of the day, and he did what he had to do with it, whether he could take care of it or give it to the commanding officer and have him do what has to be done. You often enough, your messages, if they had confidential information, were code. And they were generally 5-letter groups of numbers and or letters. And when you typed those in, the officer then went to the machine that they had to decipher the message, and that's how it was handled. So your job was important. And I liked being a radioman too, because you were right there. Anything happened, you knew first. You knew before the commanding officer. But of course, the coded message you didn't know until. But every once in a while, I would be asked as senior radioman to decode the message. That they taught me to operate the machine, and they were busy or had things to do or whatever was going on with them. So I would be asked to sit down and decode the messages. So it was a nice, interesting job. I enjoyed it.
Was there a name for the code?
No.
Okay.
It's just that the symbols, the word grouping told you, and that clued the officers what machine to use, what equipment to use to decode the message. That's how it was handled.
Wow. Were the machines secured in a
Oh yeah,
locked
and they were
place?
secured in one of the officers' rooms. I think the captain's room, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to go in there?
Oh, sure.
Oh.
That's where the machine was, and if they asked me to do it, then that's where I sat and decoded the machine.
So what was the captain's room like on the ship?
Very small.
Oh, okay.
Had a bunk, he had a sink, a closet for his clothes, his uniforms,
A desk?
And it was routine. Believe it or not, the ships were really not built for creature comfort, okay?
Okay.
Bare necessities. You had a bunk, you had a light, you had a locker, and that was it.
Right.
Yeah. Very, very plain, very plain.
So when you were typing the messages, I guess you were sitting down? Because when you say
Yes.
stand watch, it sounds
Yes.
like you're
The machine
standing.
was almost, it involved discs that you had to put in place, and then you had to operate certain keys on a machine to get the discs to rotate, and then they would spell out, however it worked out, it would spell out the message.
Oh, okay.
So that's how it worked.
It's pretty interesting.
So now we're doing all the escort duty, and then we got orders to go to the Pacific. Okay, so we all got the ship in shape and left Panama, and we went through what we call the ditch, which was, of course, the Panama Canal.
Oh, I never heard it called the ditch.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, you weren't a sailor. How would you know? But we went through the Panama Canal, and we wound up on the Pacific side, and we sailed through, and we came to San Diego. We tied up at San Diego, and the ship was outfitted with some equipment, and I do believe we had new radar put on the ship. Okay? And so we stayed at dockside while that was being done. And of course, we enjoyed being in California and San Diego. It was a nice town, beautiful weather, a lot of people, a lot of places to go. And the thing I liked about it is one day I said, you know what, I'm in California. And guess what? Hollywood's in California. And guess what? Hollywood's always looking for good actors and stars, so I'm going to go to Hollywood. So I took a weekend off. I had no watches, and I went to Hollywood. What a time I had for myself. So much fun. And that brings me back to my opening. How many people get a chance from Depression days to go to California or to go to Hollywood?
Right.
Almost none, right?
That's right.
And here I am, pocket full of money in Hollywood, California, and everybody's saying, "Hi, sailor, have a good time, have a drink on me, come on, I'll take you out to lunch." And it was just a wonderful, wonderful time, really and truly. And people don't fully understand that. They talk about the horrors of war, and it was a terrible, terrible time. I don't have to give you statistics, I'm sure you know them. But you also had a lot of guys and women had a good time. Not everybody was in battle, not everybody suffered. A lot of people had a good time. Can you imagine a sailor getting duty in Key West, Florida, or in San Diego or San Francisco, California, and stay there for the wartime? They had to have a ball. So people have to remember that. It ties in with the whole thing, you know? Mm-hmm. So we finished our outfitting and got underway and headed out west toward the Pacific. And in that course, we crossed the equator. And of course, crossing the equator means you've got to get initiated into King Neptune's kingdom. And so we had the initiation process going through, which was a lot of fun, and everybody had a great time. But you went through it, and it was a lot of fun. And then we got assigned to different areas and escorting ships from various islands, one island next to the other. Sometimes I had no idea what island we were on. We rarely landed because we would bring the ships to harbor, and if we had ships going out, we escorted them out, or if we had to go somewhere else, we went somewhere else. And as radioman, I'm getting messages saying, do this, do that, go here, go there. And one thing I would like to make a note of is on one of my tours, when I was on watch, I got the message telling us that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt died. I took the message, brought it up to the bridge, gave it to the duty officer, and I felt kind of sad, realizing he was the only, at that time, he was the only president I ever really knew. And it dawned on me that, you know, here I am as a kid, he was my president, and here I am as an adult, he's now passed away. So I thought that was kind of poetic, so to speak. But anyhow, we fussed around with all the different islands, took the ships here and there. It was kind of quiet duty. And then, of course, the moment came when they said, well, you're going to participate in the invasion of the Philippines. And okay, what do we do, you know? So the Army brought some equipment aboard the ship and installed it by the radio room. What it was, as best I could detect, it was equipment that was going to be for somebody to control the invasion forces going ashore, so that they would be on a ship and they would radio the landing craft saying, go here, do this, or whatever their job was. Well, unfortunately, the Army never got there. Okay? And I had to tune up the equipment to get ready for it, and I was up all night, one night, tuning everything to get it in shape. And the captain was there with me. He says, you know, he looked at me, and I says, all right, I says, and my sense of humor, I says, I'll do the work. I says, but you have to make the coffee. So he says, deal. He was a very nice fellow, very friendly and very proficient and very, very Navy-minded, okay? But anyhow, the invasion started. They were right in the middle.
Leyte?
And
Philippines? Leyte, right? In the
Leyte,
Philippines?
yes. And just prior to that, when we were sitting just outside the harbor, we got up one morning for breakfast, went to the mess hall, sat down and were eating, and then all of a sudden, there was a huge boom. And the ship went a little bit out of water. I says, oh my God, I says, here it is, it started, we're not even gonna fire a shot and we're gonna die. So we all ran up to see what was going on. And believe it or not, right behind us, maybe a couple thousand feet, was the battleship Pennsylvania. And what it was doing was firing broadsides into where the invasion forces were going. So that was the initiation, okay? So now I'm back in the morning and I'm with all this equipment and it's vibrating and everything I did was undone. And of course we were blacked out, everything was, all the hatches were shut, all the portholes were closed. I had no contact with the outside. Everything was just closed in. So now it's dawn, and I says, I don't know what's going on. So I opened up the hatch, and I hear all this racket. And what it is all the ships are firing, all the rockets are being fired, our ship is firing, and the invasion has started. And you're all into it. So we did our share, and I think the record shows that while it was active and there was, enough firing going on to be concerned, it generally was not as heavy as most invasions go through. But by the same token, if you look at the records, this is the period of time when Admiral Halsey left us to chase some carriers and left a minor fleet to offset the Japanese invasion fleet that was coming to cripple our operation. And we were concerned about that. But the guys that were out there in Leyte Gulf, they did such a magnificent job. They beat the Japanese Navy. They really eliminated the Japanese Navy. They were so good. But meanwhile, back at us, for whatever reason, there was firing, there was bombing, there were planes from Japan, Japanese planes. And unfortunately, we got caught. 3 fellas went down. So bad, so bad.
Sorry.
But like everything else, we had to do what we had to do. So we took care of the situation. And then once we got orders to leave and went to other parts. We did make a tour or a convoy to New Guinea. And there again, the planes caught us and we were subjected to bombings. And we got through that okay. There was no real problem, but we had to take our share, And that essentially is what happened. They finished with all of that, then my tour duty was up, because the Navy had a rotation process. And like 2 years, your time is up, and you get transferred, and whatever new orders you get, you get. So I left the area and got onto one of the islands, waited for transportation back to the States. And on the way back, I in fact went aboard a commercial freighter, a nice commercial freighter. Air traffic, I was waiting for a plane on Kwajalein Island, and that just wasn't happening, and I was impatient to get back home and, get this thing done with. And so I went down to the port director and asked him if I could hitchhike a ride. He says, well, we have a ship going to San Francisco tomorrow or whatever. So they took me aboard and took good care of me. And so I was on my way back to Frisco. On the way back, the word came out that Germany had surrendered. So I suspect I said the same thing like millions of other guys said, well, one down, one to go. And the rest of the time I spent in the area, and when the time came up to leave the Navy, I left. That essentially is Joe Dauber's experience with the U.S. Navy. I did spend time in a reserve. And you don't have to make mention of it, but just so for the record, I was called back for Korea. I was called back, and I served for about 16, 18 months stateside, and then I left the reserve. And
Where did you serve?
I stayed in the area, New York. I was in the New York area most of the time. I was on a net tender, and there was just not that much to do, and that's how it ended my Navy career.
Did you use your GI benefits?
Yes, very generous Uncle Sam. We had 52.20, okay? You could get $20 a week for 52 weeks if you couldn't find a job. And it was tough finding a job.
Oh.
And when I came out, so I think I was like two months looking for a job, 3 months looking for a job. I decided the family, with pressure, thank God, pressured me into going back and finishing high school. I had finished only 2 years high school. Remember when I told you at the beginning? So I says, okay. So I went for 6 months, 5 nights a week, and I finished 2 years of high school. Then the family says, well, Joe, as long as you did this far, what about college? I says, forget about it, you know. I says, think about it. Because college in my day, going back to the Depression days, if you went to college, you either had a lot of money or you were a real brain, okay? Otherwise, you either went to a technical school and or you quit school. And that's generally how things happened, okay? You finished high school. Most of the guys did finish high school, I suspect. But that was it. So I thought about it, and then I says, why not? So I applied. I applied to Seton Hall. And Seton Hall, by the way, at that time, this is 1950, was just really coming into bloom, so to speak, you know. And believe it or not, I was accepted. I applied to the VA. They says, gave me all the okays. They says, go to it. They picked up the tab. I went to school nights for 7 years, and I got my Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration.
Nice.
Yeah. And by the way, I was only the second one in my entire family to ever go to and graduate college. I had one cousin who graduated college before me, and he became an architect. And I was the second one. So and then I got a VA mortgage, by the way, when I bought my first home, okay? A big 4.5% interest rate at that time, and it was good, you know? And so I always felt, and still do, And Uncle Sam is very generous. There can be a lot of criticism, oh, they don't do this, they don't do that, baloney. Uncle Sam takes pretty good care of his people. And pass the word, whoever you sees this thing.
Okay.
And that's the end.
Okay. Do you have anything, John? All right. Well, I just want to show your pictures. This is a beautiful
You
portrait.
can have that.
Thank you. Okay. This one.
Sure. See there you'll see me in my dress blues, and there you'll see me in my dress whites,
That's right.
just for the distinction.
Are you sure that this is a copy?
Yes, you can have it, yes. And you can take a copy of the back too if you can pick up the print.
Yes. Good.
You can have all that stuff.
Thank you so much, Joe. And I also have to do your medals.
Okay.
But before I do, I just want to say I'm honored and humbled that you're here today to speak to us of your sacrifice and contribution that you made in service to our country.
Okay.
And thank you, and God bless you, Joe.
Okay.
Good job.
Thank you. My hand is full.
That's okay.
I gotta stand it.
Sure. So this was your rank,
Yeah.
the stripes. Okay. And then your years of service, and one of your children made this for you. Do you remember which person it was who made this shadow box?
If you have the picture, I can turn it over. I have
Oh, no,
a
no.
copy of what they are. If you want to take that, I can turn that over. for
No,
you.
I can see what they are, thanks. Okay. Sorry. One more. Let's see, right here. Do you know what that last one is, Joan? I never saw that one. Okay. I forgot to ask you, do you belong to any veteran groups?
No,
Okay. And do you go on any reunions?
there hasn't been one, no.
Oh, okay.
No,
You don't have a veterans group at Greenbrier?
no,
Oh, okay.
no.
All right. Thank you so much. It's beautiful. Good job.